Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of the Haptics Club podcast. I'm Ashley from Titan Haptics. I'm joined by the Haptics crew, Eric from Razer, Brian from Sense Glove, and Manu from Unity. The Haptics Club is a team of people that have a passion for haptics. Our goal is to raise awareness of all the amazing things, people, and tech in the space, and foster some interesting discussions around the subject. Today, we have a very special guest. We're joined by the founder and CEO of Haptx, Jake Rubin. Haptx is known for their advanced haptic glove technology, and for listeners, imagine yourself in this VR environment, and you can glide your hand across grass and actually feel the blades of the grass, and you can feel, a delicate spider, walking and its legs walking across your hand. Super enchanting. So shout out to Bob and Linda for letting me see that demo or feel that demo. But I haven't tried the latest demo, which is kind of what we're here to talk about today. So excited. Before we do,
Happy
of course. And thanks, Jake. Before we do, we have to thank our sponsor, GrewUs. GrewUs develops a wide range of actuators, sensors, acoustic sensors, and for all types of industries and applications. So I want to thank GrewUs for sponsoring this episode. Thank you so much. And of course, anyone listening, you can visit thehapticsclub.com for our upcoming episodes. Check out our latest blog featuring your favorite hapticians writing articles about all the subject matter you love. And of course, you can pick up some slick swag like our shirts and mugs at our store, thehapticsclub.com/shop. That's enough talking. Let's jump right in. Welcome, Jake.
Jake, welcome to the Haptics Club. Thanks, Ashley, for a wonderful introduction. So, Jake, let us know. We usually like to ask how our interviewee discovered haptics. So, what is your haptics story? How did you get in contact with this wonderful tech?
Yeah, so it's something I've been interested in almost as long as I can remember. Since I was a kid, I've been fascinated. You might even say unhealthily obsessed with the idea of fully immersive virtual reality. So pick your favorite fictional analog, be it the holodeck or the Matrix, Ready Player One, etc. I've just always felt, again, as long as I can remember, that if that tech could ever be realized, it would have an incredibly profound impact on every aspect of our lives. And as I got older, as I was in middle school, high school, I started to really dig into the literature and look at what was out there in terms of real VR technology. And this was during the VR winter, so to speak, between the original heyday in the late 80s and 90s, and then the reemergence with Oculus in 2012, 2013. So there really wasn't a lot happening commercially, but there was still a lot of interesting research. So I read everything I could get my hands on, and it became clear to me pretty quickly that if we were ever to realize this dream of fully immersive VR, we would have to immerse the eyes, the ears, and the rest of the body. And of those, it was clear that even though the technology wasn't commercially available at the time, we were close enough on the audio-visual components that I was confident that somebody would eventually get there. And the timing ended up being just about perfect because along comes Palmer Luckey and Oculus, and that launched this new wave of interest and investment in VR. But at that time, even years before, it was clear to me that the biggest fundamental problem that needed to be cracked on the technology side was haptics. So I spent years thinking about how could we do this? How could we actually produce realistic sensation across the entire body? I filled notebooks full of ideas, concepts, and ultimately compiled that all into a technical white paper. This was, sort of in 2012. And at the time, I knew I was ready to jump into taking this more seriously and building a career out of it. And so I went looking for somebody who could help me to realize this vision. And I ultimately ended up coming across my co-founder, Dr. Bob Crockett, who I believe you guys have had on the show as well. And it just was a serendipitous meeting. He thought I was crazy at first when I called him this 20-year-old kid with visions of building the holodeck. But I was able to win him over ultimately through the depth of just technical thinking I had done about this architecture. And he jumped in, basically just to see if this was even remotely feasible. And fast forward a couple of years, I put my life savings into founding the company, and through my partnership with Bob and the resources of his lab at Cal Poly, we were able to prove out a lot of the fundamental technologies underlying my vision, including what would become our microfluidic smart textile technology and our exoskeleton technology we've been working on in the background for a long, long time. And we were also able to file some foundational patents at that time, very early relative to other work in the space. So that period between about 2013 and 2016 formed the foundation for what has become Haptx.
That's super interesting. Thanks, Jake. It's I like these stories because the roots goes always back many years with a initial passion or a dream to solve. In your case, it's a full immersion on virtual reality. But I think you cover most of the intro question that we usually do. So I'll hand it over to Ashley for her expertise. I will jump in and out for a few questions here and there. But I think what we will want to know is we had already the technical side of things. What we will want to focus a bit, business use cases, bit more what makes magic happens, let's say.
Awesome. So you guys just started shipping your new G1 gloves. I didn't have a chance to try it, which I'm super disappointed about, but I'd love for you to actually just kind of give the audience an idea of like what the difference is between your like last generation and this generation, just so they can wrap their heads around it if they've never seen it or tried it either.
Sure. Well, I'll kind of just pick up the company story where I left off. Around 2016, 2017, we had developed this foundational set of technologies. And at that time, we raised our first round of outside funding, and we knew that we had to go out and pick a bite-sized piece of this grand, full-body, fully immersive vision and work on bringing that to market, commercializing that. And that ultimately was what became our Haptx gloves. And we've been through, for those of you who have seen some of our prior products, we've been through several generations of this product. We built multiple prototypes starting in 2016, 2017. We had 2 generations of dev kits in 2018 and 2021, respectively. And those systems generated a lot of buzz and excitement because they showed what was possible with our microfluidic smart textile technology that provides hundreds of points of realistic full displacement skin feedback across the hands. And I think that got folks very excited, both in industry, in the industry and among our customer base. We were able to build a lot of great customer relationships, really start to work with customers, understand what they needed to make haptics more than just a fun toy, to deploy this at scale for real industrial use cases. So that's been our primary focus with the G1 gloves. We took all of our learnings from these dev kits, which for all their good qualities, were development kits. They were low volume, they were a high price point. They had a variety of issues around ergonomics and usability, et cetera. So we took all of the feedback we've gotten from thousands and thousands of hours of customer testing, demos, pilots, evaluations, and we put all of that into our G1 system. So among the differences, first off, this is not a development kit. This is not a prototype. This is a full-scale commercial product. So we're producing this at a lower price point. This is a much more robust product that's designed for use and abuse in the field with real industrial customers. We've implemented a variety of new features based on customer feedback, including a fully overhauled glove ergonomic design. So the glove is now fully soft across the palm and fingers, which allows for unlimited flexibility, allows for manipulation of real-world objects for mixed reality use cases and just things like, picking up a cup of coffee or adjusting your headset, for example. We have multiple sizes now. So we've implemented 4 different sizes to fit a variety of different adult hand sizes, which may sound trivial, but it's actually really, really critical, we found, especially for a product like this, with so many points of feedback that require such tight tolerances and contact to the skin, to have multiple sizes to give the best possible fit. We've also made the system fully wireless. So our AirPack system now, essentially the fluidic computer that powers the microfluidics in these gloves, can be worn as a backpack, and it's fully wireless. You can move around through as large of a scale, Rubin scale setup as you have available.
That's awesome. What are some of the kind of key use cases for these types of gloves, like your latest gloves? Like, what are some of the kind of partners that you work with or the industries you work with where this is like a kind of critical use?
Yeah, so there's an incredibly wide variety of use cases that run the gamut from academic research use cases through to early entertainment use cases, design use cases. But by far the majority of our business right now is concentrated around workforce training. And we look at workforce training as a coin that has 2 sides. On one side, you have today's workforce, which is obviously human. That's training today's workers to be better at performing tasks that require some element of hands-on, manual skills, motor skills. Our customers will often tell us that today's VR systems without realistic haptics, they're great for learning about something. Like, let's say you're doing a soft skills training where you're learning to better interact with a customer, for example. You don't really need haptics for that. But when you have something that requires hands-on, dexterous manipulation of objects, which is the majority of tasks that customers need to train in an industrial environment, it is really critical to have realistic haptics to allow you to build that muscle memory and to train more effectively. So that's one key use case. The other side of that coin is tomorrow's workforce, which is going to be increasingly automated. So this has been kind of an exciting emerging application area for us, is leveraging our technology to train the next generation of robots. This is both for telemanipulation, so where you're remotely controlling a robotic system with a sophisticated, usually hand-like dexterous end effector. And that has applications in things like hazardous materials handling. So think nuclear materials, oil and gas, defense applications, munitions, where you have something that you need a robot to dexterously handle, but you don't want to have a human interacting with those elements. We found an even bigger emerging market opportunity in the humanoid robotic space. So there's been a surge of interest and investment lately in building next generation humanoid robots. And those robots, by definition, have or will have dexterous end effectors. And the real challenge for these robots, there's so much excitement right now about AI and robotics, and the intersection is incredibly promising. But I think there is a misconception that, we can just take ChatGPT and download that into the brain of a robot and set it off on its merry way. And again, that is to some degree true. There's a lot of promise in these new generation transformer models to take robotic manipulation and robot autonomy to a new level. But the biggest difference between robotics, or what they call embodied AI, and more traditional text or image or video based generative AI applications is the lack of a suitable data set for training. ChatGPT, for example, had effectively the whole internet. Billions of high-quality examples of what it was trying to produce: text, images, video. In robotics, there is no corresponding data set, and there's really no good way, or there hasn't historically been any good way of even generating that data. And so we found, working with our partners like Sanctuary AI and other companies in the at the cutting edge of the humanoid robotic space, that our gloves and the rich data set of manipulation data that they can produce are actually unique and hugely valuable in training those next generation robot AI systems. So that's really been somewhat surprising to us, in just how critical the technology has been to that use case, and how rapidly that use case is becoming commercially important.
Thanks, Jake, for this introduction. So I'm a big believer in haptics, which I think as a philosophy it's a bit orthogonal of what you're proposing, which is less is more for me in haptics most of the time. And I always try to think about what's the minimum I can do and get away with the object that I want to achieve. Many reasons. And I'm admiring the kind of approach that you are having in virtual reality. So let's go back to the use cases that you mentioned for training, mostly simulation and training. There are other haptics companies out there that build a haptics glove, which are preceding the similar market, the same market, overlapping market. And some of them took like a less is more approach, some of them took a more immersive approach. So what are the types of use cases? And most of them are market driven right now, since a few years. So what are the use cases that a G1 can solve where other gloves out there struggle or can't meet the expectations?
Sure, it's a good question. So, we have a customer base that's primarily focused on high-end enterprise applications, and I'm pleased to share, as we announced a week or two ago, we've actually secured tens of millions of dollars in pre-orders for our G1 product. So there's been a huge amount of customer pull for this level of realistic haptics. And given the price point, given the complexity of the product, given, as you said, the existence of other less is more alternatives, this is really in applications where the level of dexterity and the level of fidelity that our product can provide uniquely is either beneficial or essential for the application. Our customers are primarily concentrated in medical applications. So this includes both training and telemedicine applications, in defense and national security applications, where we have mission critical training objectives, both in, for example, vehicle training, dismounted soldier training, medical and operation support training, like maintenance training, industrial applications. So we recently announced a partnership with BNSF, where they're leveraging our technology to train their workers on tasks like locomotive maintenance, where that level of dexterity is required to be able to accurately manipulate the complex components of, for example, a locomotive engine. We have customers in areas like oil and gas. So really, it comes down to high-end enterprise applications where there is a high level of value in training dexterous motor skills. That's really where our customer base is primarily concentrated. If you don't need that level of fidelity, you're probably not using our product. There are certainly cheaper alternatives out there. There are lower fidelity alternatives out there. So we focus on kind of those premium applications where they do truly need a high level of realism for this to be effective. And among our customers, I would say one of their biggest fears is negative training. This is something that comes up over and over again, and why they've either found other alternatives to be ineffective, or they've gravitated toward our solution in the first place. Often what our customers find is when they deploy more symbolic haptic systems, the human brain is very flexible, and your brain will adapt to whatever input that you have on your hands, and you'll ultimately learn to do a task, even if that's a very, very basic set of feedback, or frankly no feedback at all. But the problem is when you go to do that task in the real world, you've now developed a set of motor skills and motor responses that not only are not correct for the real world task, but they're so far away from the actual set of muscle memory that you require to perform the task in the real world that you actually have to unlearn the incorrect set of responses first. We have a number of customers, especially in, let's say, the defense space, where they've been experimenting with haptics for 30, 35 years. And they've seen over and over again that if you don't meet this relatively high bar of realism, that you're actually forming those incorrect muscle memory and motor associations that then go on to be worse than useless in training.
Very cool. I'd love to know, Jake, are there certain situations where, and kind of what I want to dive into is more of the business side of this, because it's anyone in haptics knows that to kind of get someone interested in a haptic experience, the best idea is to basically get them in it, get them to try it, and it kind of sells itself. But I'm kind of curious from your perspective, are there certain kind of issues you've met along the way, or challenges that you've met as you've grown? Because you mentioned you've got all these new sales, you've kind of grown your audience now that you've got a full-fledged product, but let's talk about the challenges.
Yeah, I think it's a great observation that customers really need to be able to try the technology. Our biggest challenge by far historically, and still to this day, even as we ramp production on our first full-scale mass-produced commercial product, is getting enough of these units into customers' hands quickly enough. Particularly for a product like this at a higher price point. Really, I can think of very few instances where we've had customers order the product without, not just one person trying it, but a variety of key decision makers, key stakeholders at the customer, getting their hands in the gloves and having a good experience. So that is by far the most important thing, is, for them to be able to try it. I think haptic demos so often can be magical because they deliver something that most people who haven't had experience with haptics have never seen before. That level of immersion, that level of tactile or haptic stimulation. But by the same token, unlike, let's say, a company selling a software product, traditional SaaS business, you can't just deliver that demo over the internet. They can't just go, download something onto their computer and try it. So that is definitely the biggest bottleneck for us in terms of growing sales and increasing the market penetration of the product. It's just simply getting it into enough customers' hands. We find when folks try it, they almost always have a good experience, but we have to be able to actually get it out there. So as we speak, we're investing heavily in a fleet of essentially demo and lease units that we can provide to customers all over the world for short-term demos and for longer-term evaluations before they invest in the product. And that is our number one sales tool for actually getting this product into the hands of customers.
Thanks, Jake. That's super helpful. I would like to ask you about how do you see a little bit the evolution of this product? Because now you said it's a full-fledged commercial product. I imagine you had some early market feedback regarding all of that, and it's portable. It's movable, let's say, but it's not really super portable. You still have a backpack, this type of thing. How do you see the future? You see mostly moving down market with a reduced set of haptic endpoints with associated reduced set of dimension of the driving system, or you see more the future with a really strong miniaturization of the same system while maintaining the same haptic quality?
I'd actually say neither. I think for us, just given the unique nature of our market, we're focused on a very premium market segment where there is an extreme value to realism and immersion. And for this market, even the highest quality hand haptic feedback is sometimes not enough. We've made no secret of our ambition as a company and our focus as a company on full body scalability. We don't think of ourselves as a glove company. Gloves are the first product we produced, but behind the scenes, every day that we've been working on gloves, we've also been working to a lesser extent on our full body exoskeleton technology. And we believe that with this generation of gloves, we're getting to the point of diminishing returns with what a hand mounted wearable product that is body grounded can provide. That's not to say that there aren't opportunities to improve the gloves. We will obviously be working on improving the gloves to reduce size, to reduce cost, increase the number of actuation points, create additional sizes, make it even more comfortable and lighter weight. But those are effectively incremental changes. Think about, let's say the iPhone 1 to the iPhone 3 or the iPhone 4. It's not going to revolutionize the experience. And the biggest thing that is missing from our G1 experience today, or from any haptic glove experience, even a theoretically optimal haptic glove that cost almost nothing, had an infinite number of points of feedback, and was perfect in every way, it's not giving you that body scale grounded feedback. So that's fine if you're manipulating a relatively light object. I pick up this AirPods case, and in the real world, the vast majority of the feedback for this sort of small scale dexterous task is coming from mechanoreceptors in the skin of my fingers and my palm, and in the muscles and ligaments of my fingers. But what happens when I try and pick up this desk that's under me? I'm picking up a 20 or 30 pound object. In the real world, the vast majority of that stimulation, and the heavier the object is, the more and more of that comes from the arms, from the torso, even from the legs, with those grounded forces. Same thing if I'm, for example, leaning against an object. So we have a lot of customers, I'd say about a third of our customers, where there's already a strong customer pull to go beyond the wearable body grounded haptics to something that combines the tactile, the high fidelity tactile feedback on the hand we provide with grounded force feedback. So I can't reveal a lot of details on exact product roadmap, but I can say that sooner than you might think, we will be introducing products that take that feedback to the next level, beyond just the hands, to the body as a whole. And that is right now the biggest difference between the experience of using any haptic glove or any body grounded haptic device, even again a theoretically perfect one, and real world touch. So that's the gap that we're trying to close with our next generation of products.
Very cool. I'm curious, from your kind of initial vision, it resonates so dearly with me when you say things like the holodeck, because like as a uber nerd, you kind of envision a world where you can experience whatever you want within a space or do whatever you want. Do you see that eventually your products may come to more consumer focus, or that maybe other companies, because it seems like most companies in this space are just purely dedicated to industry, which makes sense based on the audience base. But is that part of your vision, or do you just see this kind of as a purely non kind of consumer product?
Yeah, I'll be honest, when I first came up with this vision, today's enterprise use cases weren't really a big part of what I had in my mind. I was dreaming of the same thing you mentioned of consumers being able to experience these infinite realities, more entertainment and socially oriented applications. But then over years of trying to build this business and going through the harsh reality of fundraising and customer acquisition, it just became very clear that there was no real consumer market for this technology today. And even with near infinite resources, even if we had the resources of a Meta, for example, it's still very challenging to produce this kind of a product, for a consumer at a viable price point with a massive content ecosystem, that allows this to be commercially adopted. So it just became very clear to us quickly that we could not start with consumer. And on the other hand, we were getting a very warm reception from enterprise, where we found all of these very important problems in industry that we had never even dreamed of, that were begging for a solution like what we had developed. So over the years, we pivoted more and more toward those high-end enterprise applications to the point where for today and for the foreseeable future, the company is going to be laser focused on those enterprise applications. I would say, though, that I spend a lot of time thinking about that longer term path to consumer. And I do think that we have a clear but not quick path to ultimately bringing this technology to the consumer. The first step, which will happen in the relatively near future, is a B2B2C approach. So think location-based entertainment venues like theme parks and arcades. This is really more of a business-to-business sale. You're not selling directly to a consumer. And while these companies don't have the budget of say a high-end military or industrial or medical customer, they are able to invest in a much higher fidelity, more immersive experience, and then turn around and sell that on a ticketed basis. So 20-minute session here, 30-minute session there to a customer. So that's the first time that the customer is going to be able to access an experience like this using equipment like ours, is going to be through that location-based entertainment environment. As far as bringing this to consumer in-home, it's going to be quite a few years. We are actively working as we work on introducing new products and increasing immersion. In parallel, we're working on reducing size, reducing cost. But just to be frank, today, again, even with infinite resources, there is no viable path to a $500 or $1,000 version of our G1 glove system. It's just not possible. I do think, in the next, call it 10 years, I do think we or someone else will bring a haptic glove to the consumer market that has at least some of the features that our G1 system does today. In parallel, I believe as VR, as spatial computing becomes a bigger and bigger part of the average consumer's life, that the willingness to pay will increase. Today, if you talk about potentially spending thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars on an immersive computing setup, a VR setup, you think, oh my God, that person's crazy, because there's just no reason to do that as a consumer. But at some point, I believe and I hope that this will become a compelling enough experience, and there will be enough use cases, enough applications, enough value, that the consumer will start to think of this almost more akin to travel. So just like you would pay for an airplane ticket, or you would pay for a car, you would pay for an immersive portal that can take you to these other worlds and these other experiences. But obviously, you can tell that's not in the near future. I think that is 10 plus years out, but that is something that we are actively working toward, and I know others in the industry are actively working toward, and I do eventually think that will happen.
Thanks, Jake. I would like to double down on what you mentioned about the kind of technologies. You are focused on microfluid technologies, which require pumps, which are transport the pressure toward the fingertip. And pumps are electromechanical systems that make noise, and they exist, whatever. In some situations, it's acceptable. In some other, for example, entertainment, it's a bit more challenging, as noise is a major factor of things. Do you see, and we saw in the latest year a few, let's say, they call them slow indentation of organic movement technology that came up on the haptic side of things that might help to reduce the dependency on pumps. Do you see anything that you are interested in, that you would be looking at potentially, because your company does products for to solve problems on the market? The microfluid technology is one of the key features you have. Would you be considering switching technologies at certain points, or would you be more looking into optimizing what you have?
We're more focused on optimizing what we have. We believe that for the type of applications we're focused on, which again are primarily concerned with optimizing the fidelity and immersion of the experience at the expense of things like form factor and cost, that pneumatics are the correct and the only approach. You're right, there are a variety of other emerging approaches that use fluidics. There are, you could look at, for example, electroosmotic pumps or other hydraulic-based applications. There's some interesting work on what they call haxels, which use are a similar variation of using electric forces to essentially propel a liquid. The challenge with all of those approaches for the kind of applications we're looking at is, just there is a huge limitation just from a physics perspective and energy density perspective when you no longer have a centralized power source. So you have this big pump that produces a compressed air, and all you're doing is you're using a little tiny valve to open and close, a small channel to dispense that fluid. Now, somewhere at the either at the source of actuation or close to it, you have to actually produce all of that energy. It just becomes very difficult to get all the same performance characteristics that you see in a pneumatic system that does benefit from that centralized compression. And that manifests in very slow response times. These systems, for example, are very slow flow rates relative to pneumatics, relatively low displacements, et cetera. So we haven't seen anything that we think is going to be competitive from a performance perspective with pneumatics. But I do think there is a big market opportunity for some of these other, fluid technologies, say hydraulic technologies, to produce a product that is called a compromise in performance. It's not going to match the performance of pneumatics, but it can produce a much more compact form factor. So I do hope to see some of those technologies, find more commercial applications over the next couple of years.
Hey, Jake, sorry to drill down on this one, but I think it's an interesting topic to discuss, which is the law of diminishing return, right? Oh. Which is right now we have one data point, which is your system is super high fidelity. And we have some other data points, which are, let's say the other Haptics glove, which are literally not doing anything regarding skin indentation, or some of them somewhere. And there is a huge gap between the two. Don't you see as a risk the fact that, let's say that the third company comes up with the Haptic glove, which is, let's say, more form factor easy or less good, but using another type of technology, which literally solves like 90% of the use cases that you're solving at the moment with that technology, but because nobody knew that before. So how are you planning for this type of cases, or what's your thought about that?
We are. We're actively looking at alternate versions of our technology that might compromise a little bit on the number of channels, for example, or level of performance. But again, we are primarily focused on what we're seeing as the pull from our customer base, which is not toward a more compact, lower cost version of the same system. It's toward adding additional functionality and additional modalities. So, I think you might assume that our path forward is, okay, take what we already have, and for the next 5 or 10 years, just focus on making that smaller, more compact, easier to use. We see gloves as a stepping stone to something larger. We don't necessarily see today's glove products as a long-term stable product category on their own. And that's about all I can say in terms of product roadmap. I can't get into too much detail on our product roadmap, but I can say our primary focus, as I mentioned before, is on incorporating other aspects of haptic feedback that are fundamentally missing from a glove-only experience. And in that context, it does also fundamentally alter the technical trade-offs with the drive system. So in that context, we are less focused on mobility, which is part of why we have designed the system around our air pack from day one.
Awesome. Jake, I'd love to know, you've kind of had a really cool milestone. At 25, you raised, was it 5.8 million for Haptx? I think for other Haptics companies that are just kind of getting started, can you give some advice at kind of like approach things you need to consider that are kind of unique to the Haptics industry or Haptics products?
Yeah, I would say it is, it's tough out there, especially right now for all startups. I know it's a challenging time to fundraise. The market has been volatile, really the last couple of years. And, unfortunately, I'd love to say there's some secret for Haptics or some secret for hardware, but, as hard as it is right now to raise for any startup, it's 10 times harder to raise for deep tech. And it's probably even 10 times harder again to raise for deep tech that is in a relatively niche market area like Haptx. So, there's no real secret. It's a grind. I mean, you have to have hundreds, thousands of conversations. It is really critical to get your technology in front of investors. I think just about every investor that we've closed has tried our technology, and that really has been what made the difference, is that how compelling that experience was. But yeah, it's meeting after meeting after meeting, and ultimately, if you're lucky, you find that right fit. There's no real shortcut.
Yeah, that definitely resonates. In terms of other advice that you'd give to like an early stage company that's just kind of getting started, are there like key learnings that you've had, like mistakes you've made along the way, which like we all have hundreds? Like, what kind of advice would you give to someone who is just kind of getting into haptics, maybe needs some advice of where to find information, things that they just would need to consider?
Yeah, so I think, for somebody just getting into haptics, I think I would advise them to, go out. Don't be afraid to reach out to folks in the industry. Folks are welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn, for example, and I try and get back to those who message me, and just go find people who are doing things you're interested in. Don't be afraid to talk to them. Don't be afraid to ask them questions, and to go out and learn all you can.
Awesome. I know when I was watching the Lucky Palmer talk, he said, you have to ask, but very poignant questions. Is there any particular topic you're most keen to answer questions on?
No, I'm happy to chat with folks about haptic technologies, about about the business of haptics, about their startups. I mean, there's a lot of it's a vibrant community. There's a lot of new technologies and new companies that I would love to see continue to grow and succeed. So again, I welcome folks to reach out to me on LinkedIn if they want to connect.
Very cool. This is now heading into my favorite area, which is the future of haptics. You've covered quite a bit of the future of haptics already, but I think I wanted to take it from a slightly different angle. Where do you see the role of haptic technology evolving in the next 10 years? So this isn't just specific to what you guys are working on. This is just kind of the industry as a whole.
Yeah, so I think if we take the two thrusts that we've talked about here, one that we're primarily focused on of creating the most realistic and immersive experience, I do believe, in the next 10 years, we will get to a fully immersive, full body haptic experience. That's something that we're hyper focused on. And I think that will fundamentally change the industry and I believe the world. Being able to be fully present in a virtual environment, to use your full body to interact with objects in a relatively natural manner, that does have the potential to change everything. On the other hand, I think if you look at the continuing trends in today's haptic devices, I agree with Eric that I think there is a rich unexplored area, a gap between, for example, our G1 system, which is way on the high end in terms of fidelity and specs, and most other more symbolic haptic systems today. And I do think we will continue to see innovation in that space, and I hope that within the next 10 years we will see a glove that provides some level of the functionality that we have in our G1 system. True, what we call our true contact haptic feedback, so true skin displacement haptic feedback with a reasonable number of points, decent force feedback, decent motion tracking, all in a package that's accessible to consumers or at least to prosumers. And we'll see if it's a startup that does that, or if it's a big company like a Meta or a Microsoft or an HTC. But I do think we will see a product like that in the next 10 years, once there really is a critical mass of market demand in that consumer space for a product like that.
Love it. Super exciting. I think for anyone listening who maybe can't wrap their head around the concept of a full body suit and the value of that, because I think there's, someone who's maybe never tried gloves, the haptics they've had is limited to controllers. Like, maybe talk us through an experience or an example that can just help them understand maybe what this kind of, the future that Jake is painting, what does that future look like as like a tangible idea?
I think if we do our job right, the product, the actual haptic device, is no longer the focus. It acts almost like a portal that you step through, and you are in another world, as if you had traveled to this world, and you can use your whole body naturally. So that is the ultimate interface, is one that is both full body, fully immersive, and fully transparent. So you're not thinking about the interface. You're just there. And I think that is part of the beauty of these highly immersive interfaces is there is no learning curve. If you can use your hands to pick up objects in the real world, you should be able to use your hands, in our gloves to manipulate objects. By the same token, if you can walk around and you can, touch things and interact with things in the real world, you should be able to use some of the next generation devices that we're developing to do the same thing in virtual environments. So I really do think within the next 10 years, we'll reach a point where it is seamless and it is fully immersive. And that will be a whole new category of devices that will open up huge new opportunities for us as an industry.
Awesome. Super exciting. And then last but not least, I want to make sure that people can find where Haptx is, what they're looking at, what they can look forward to, like what is your website, where should they go, where can they learn more about you, and hopefully have a chance to go to one of the upcoming events where you'll have one of your demos so they can check it out themselves. Where can they find you?
Yeah, haptx.com is the best source. If you sign up for our newsletter, there's a prominent link on the site. We'll keep you updated on all of our various events. We also post regularly on LinkedIn and on other social sites. So if you follow us there, you can also get updates on where we'll be. And I encourage you to come and check it out. We just debuted our new G1 system at AWE just a week or so ago, and we were thrilled to win Best of Show there out of 300 plus exhibitors. So clearly it resonated with folks who tried it. Would love to, anyone who's interested, would love to have you come and try it at the next show that we're at.
Awesome. Very cool. Jake, thank you so much. Sadly, this is the end of the episode, but we want to thank Jake for joining us. For anyone listening, be sure to check out thehapticsclub.com and follow us on LinkedIn and X. And you want an amazing conversation starter? You got to pick up one of our Haptics Club shirts, mugs at our store at thehapticsclub.com/shop. Trust me, it works. And of course, you can catch all our episodes on Spotify, on Apple, on YouTube, all major platforms. And a big thank you to our listeners who support us, send us kind words, meet us at AWE, which is super cool. And we'll see you at the next episode.